What's up, y'all? This is DJ Amir. One half of Con and Amir, BBE Records, 180 Proof Records, which is my label imprint. And I'm here to talk about the Charles Mingus live recording from the Strata Concert Gallery in Detroit from 1973. I guess I should start off with how I came upon these masters. It was in the summer of 2017 that I got an email from the owner of Strata, Barbara Cox, stating that her friend, Hermine Brooks, the widow of Roy Brooks, the drummer, had in her possession the masters to the Charles Mingus concert. And she was like, you should talk to her because she has them and want to find out if you want to put them out. And of course, I'm like, yes, I didn't even know these existed. So, you know, I contact Hermine. We talk about the concert. She tells me that, you know, it's 4.5 hours of music. It's 5 different masters. There's a 15-minute interview with her husband, Roy Brooks, just talking about jazz music and the politics of jazz music and so on and so forth. So I contact Peter, the owner of BBE, and I'm like, you know, hey man, this will be a great project for us to do. So we got John Morales to transfer the 2-inch masters. He transferred them, had them sent to me while I was still in Berlin at the time. And man, to listen to it, it's like you're in the room with Mingus and the band. The Strata Concert Gallery was a really small, intimate space. So you get to hear people from, you know, chewing gum, to smacking their lips, to private conversations, to, you know, Mingus talking to the band. You get to hear other people talking in the band. You get to hear Mingus talking. It's a really incredible recording that, you know, I didn't even know existed because I knew that there were concerts at the Strata Gallery, you know, from Mingus to Herbie Hancock to Ornette Coleman to Elvin Jones and a few others, because I have the flyers scanned. I had those scanned like 10 years ago. So I knew about all of this stuff. I just didn't know that the recordings existed. So we go from there, and just myself and my engineer, Alex Abrash. Alex and I, for the last year, have gone over this recording so many times to get it to where it sounds now. You know, obviously with live recordings, there's always gonna be unpredictable noise, distortion, microphone feedback, you know, because again, the Strata guys, it wasn't like it was a multi-million-dollar studio that they were recording this in, or, you know, like the Blue Note or Dizzy's in New York City at Lincoln Center. It's a really small operation. So they had to do what they could do with the kind of budgetary constraints that they had. So being that the way it was, you know, there was a lot of distortion that we had to get rid of. But in some cases, a lot of the microphone feedback and just some of the background noise adds to the ambiance of the recording. It makes it like you're in the room. Like, you know, I don't know how many people will be listening to this that were born in that time, you know, but in the 70s, you know, it makes you feel like you're in 1973 in the Strata Concert Gallery in Detroit at that moment. And that's a real special moment because, you know, Mingus was in between deals, between his deal of Atlantic and Columbia. That's one of the reasons why we were able to put this out. So yeah, I mean, this recording is a special piece of history that, you know, would have been lost if Hermine Brooks hadn't, you know, saved it and cherished it. And, you know, God bless me to be able to come and be able to like really have the chance to put this out so that the world can hear this, besides the people that were there and besides the people that were listening to WDET, which was the national broadcasting company that was broadcasting this live at the time with Bud Spangler. So besides those people, you know, back in 1973, which probably most likely was a small audience, now the world gets to hear Mingus in a different way. I mean, you have tracks like Dizzy's Profile, which is another kind of take on the song Dizzy's Moods, which everybody knows, but he did this track featuring Joe Gardner, and it's, I think, the first time that this was ever been recorded. or played live at the time, and also the track Nod Your Head Blues. He's just vibing with the band and he's having a good time, and you get to hear, you know, the audience members. There's an audience member who's clearly drunk that's like, Mingus, man, I love you, man. You're the greatest, man. And he's just going on, and you know, and I think at one point he calls Mingus, Charles Mingus, Chuck, which to me is a little, you know, like, whoa, okay. But that's how intimate it was, you know, and you know, there's audience members that are really just vibing with the whole thing, you know. I think the Strata Gallery may have been able to fit 20 people, 30 people at the most, and may have been even less. But because of that, you know, this quintet that, you know, Mingus had were able to really get loose and just be themselves in front of a small audience. There's not the pressure of like, you're at Carnegie Hall and you have to, you know, really have to play well because you got to really sell tickets to be at Carnegie Hall, you know. So it's not like that. And he's amongst his people, you know. Barbara and Kenny Cox, you know, they were friends of Mingus and Herbie and all these other people that came to play. You know, they respected Kenny as well as a pianist, as a composer himself. So he was well known, and they were trying to do something right by the Strata people because, you know, just as a small independent, you know, black-owned label out of Detroit, it was hard. You know, people think about, you know, Motown doing their thing, but by the time 1973 came along, Motown was already out of Detroit. They were already in LA and they were doing their thing, which left a huge vacuum for, you know, other labels to come up because it was harder for them to come up and to do what they were doing. So, you know, much props and, you know, accolades to labels like Strata, Tribe Records, and all the other labels that came out, you know, during that time, trying to push music forward. And they gave a platform for artists. And one of the things that Barbara always used to say to me, or when she first told me about the Strata Gallery, she said when they had Herbie Hancock, you know, they would not serve alcohol so that all ages could come. And you would have little kids there. And when Herbie was there, you know, like when he was playing the piano, there was a little kid, there were little kids under the piano, like looking up at Herbie, like, oh my God, like he was God almost, you know what I mean? And then she was like, I'll never forget that. And she said also that the local mafia came by and they were like, basically like, who the hell are these guys that they can bring Herbie Hancock and Charles Mingus and Keith Jarrett and all the other people to this really small hole in the wall in Detroit? So yeah, they were able to, you know, exist and be able to be a resource for the community, because a lot of these people, there was no other way they could go see Mingus at one of the big concert halls in Detroit, or Herbie, or Keith Jarrett, or any of these people. So this was a way for Strata and Barbara and Kenny to give back to the community that they grew up in and that they were very familiar with, that, you know, they knew these people loved the music, but they wouldn't be able to afford it. So this is a way for them to afford it, to have some cultural experiences, especially after the insurrections in 1967 and 68 in Detroit that really devastated that city and they're still suffering from. And yeah, so I hope everyone enjoys this as much as I do, because I think it's a really great piece of history, audio history and somewhat visual history. So please go out and purchase this magnificent, you know, time in history. Thank you.